My name is Eleanor, and I'm 80. It's a strange number. It sounds like a finish line that you cross in complete apathy. Looking back and not understanding how you got here. It's Tuesday morning. My kitchen smells of furniture polish and lemon. Tea smells I once considered signs of a successful life. I'm sitting at the oak table that Arthur and I bought in 1982. It's so sturdy it'll outlast both of us by a century. And that's the first irony of my life, the furniture in this house has always been sturdier than our feelings. I look at the silver spoon I hold in my hands. I polish it every week. Why? I don't know. It must be muscle memory about how to be the perfect wife. You know that role. It requires perfect posture, a hushed voice, and the ability to blend into the interior. For 45 years, I was the gold standard. That's what we were called in Connecticut. Arthur and Eleanor are the rock. No raised tones. No dirty windows. We were the showpiece of a marriage that young couples looked at with awe. If only they knew that behind every perfectly pressed tablecloth lay a void that could be measured in light years. How did we get here? It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, insidious erosion. We were different in the 70s. We were loud. We listened to jazz. We argued politics until we were hoarse. I remember Arthur in 1974. His hair smelled of the wind. His eyes burning with curiosity about every inch of my soul. He wanted to know why I was afraid of thunderstorms and what I thought about when I looked at the sea. We were close then, but then adulthood came. It came in the guise of responsibility. Arthur got a promotion, we bought this house, and the kids appeared. And without us both noticing, curiosity was replaced by logistics. Our conversations turned into reports. Did you pay for the insurance? Yes. Did you take Mark to the football game? Yes. Should I buy chicken or fish for dinner? It doesn't matter. We became professional managers of our shared life. I remember one evening, I was 42. I read a book that literally turned my world upside down, something about inner freedom and unrealized dreams. My heart was pounding. I was waiting for Arthur from work to share this fire. He came in tired, with a briefcase that seemed heavier than the whole world to him. I opened my mouth to say, "Arthur, I feel like we're losing something important. I want to paint again. I want us to go somewhere." But he looked at me and asked, "Elle, have you seen the tax receipt? It's not where it is." And I closed my mouth. I swallowed my inspiration like a bitter pill. "Be comfortable, Eleanor," an inner voice whispered to me. "He works for you. Don't burden him with your nonsense." That evening, I first realized that my rightness was my prison. I began to maintain this facade with maniacal devotion. If everything at home was perfect, if the children were the best in class, if dinner was on schedule, then we were happy. Isn't that right? We stopped fighting. That was our biggest mistake. Fighting is a sign of life, a cry that you care. And we became polite. Oh, that murderous Anglo-Saxon politeness. "Thank you, dear. Please, dear." We passed each other in the corridor, like two ships afraid to collide. Because the impact might reveal that both vessels had long been rotten from the inside, I saw him go out too. Arthur used to draw amazing sketches. I found them recently in the basement. There were portraits of people in the subway, trees in the park. They had passion, but he left it because a man should provide for his family. We both sacrificed our souls to this house with a white picket fence. We thought we were building a fortress, but we built a sarcophagus. He slept on his right side, I on his left. There was always this invisible wall between us, a million unspoken words thick. I knew the rhythm of his breathing, but I didn't know what he was dreaming about. I knew what pills he was taking for his blood pressure, but I didn't know what was making his heart beat. We became functions of each other. Wife and husband are titles that had no people behind them. You know what the scariest thing about the 80s is? It's the realization that you've spent 16,425 days simply not causing problems. I was so unproblematic that I became invisible. Arthur got used to my presence like a comfortable chair. You don't ask a chair what it dreams about. You just sit down at his place after a hard day. And I was just there. Always. Waiting for him to notice me. Not my housework, not my childcare, but me. But how could he notice a woman who had erased herself to be perfect? Today, I look at that silver spoon and see my distorted reflection in it. An old woman in a perfect house. I have everything we dreamed of in 1972. And I would give it all for one day of chaos back then. For one real fight. For one moment when we were painfully honest. Because correctness is just another word for dying before your heart stops. You know, memory works strangely at 80. I can forget where I put my glasses 5 minutes ago. But I remember that conversation with Arthur with every breath I take. With every speck of dust that danced in the setting sun above his hospital bed. It was Tuesday. On the bedside table stood a glass of water and a plastic straw that he no longer had the strength to squeeze with his lips. He was silent for 3 days. And then suddenly he opened his eyes. They were transparent, as if washed by rain. "Al," he croaked. "Come closer." Closer. I leaned so low that I could smell the medicine and old paper that now came from his skin. I took his hand. It was cold, despite the July heat. I was about to say my next correct phrase. Something like, "Arthur, my dear, rest. You need to gain strength. The children will come tomorrow." "Shut up," he said suddenly. Not rudely, no. Just with such weight, as if each word had cost him a year of his life. "Enough of tomorrow. For me, tomorrow is already yesterday. Listen to me. We have lived 45 years, Eleanor. 45 years of impeccable, refined, empty silence." I shuddered. My back straightened involuntarily. The habit of keeping up a facade was stronger than grief. "Arthur, what are you talking about? We were happy. We had a wonderful marriage. We had a contract," he interrupted. And for a moment the same fire I had seen in the 70s flickered in his eyes. "We signed it when we bought this big house. We agreed I would provide the scenery, you would polish it. But we forgot to include living people in the contract. Al, tell me honestly, when was the last time you laughed so hard you couldn't breathe? Not with that polite smile for the neighbors, but for real." I was silent. I tried to remember, but only images came to mind: dinners, parties, trips to visit relatives. Everything was pleasant, but nothing was alive. You see, he smiled sadly. His fingers barely touched my hand. We spent so much time trying to be right that we completely forgot to be close. Do you remember 85? That night when there was a thunderstorm and the lights went out. I remember, I whispered. I was terribly worried that the freezer would defrost and the food would spoil. That's exactly what I'm talking about. He almost shouted it, coughing. I wanted to drag you out onto the terrace then. I wanted us to dance in the rain like crazy. I had even started to unlace my shoes. And you stood there with a flashlight counting the meat supplies. And I was scared. I was scared of your prudence. I put my shoes back on. And so I put my shoes on every time my soul wanted to run barefoot to you. I felt a lump rise in my throat. It hurt. It was so unfair to hear it now, when nothing could be changed. You never told me that. Arthur, why were you silent? Because you were perfect, Eleanor. And with perfect people, it's impossible to be honest. You created a world where there was no room for my weakness, for my stupid ideas, for my impractical dreams. Do you know why I never took you to Scotland? Not because of the money, and not because of the work. I held my breath. Scotland was my only wrong dream, the one I allowed myself to voice every few years. I was afraid, he continued, and a tear rolled from the corner of his eye, disappearing into his gray stubble. I was afraid that there, among those wild rocks and mists, we would finally see how alien we were to each other. That there wouldn't be our furniture, our habits, our roles. There would be just us. Two old people with nothing to talk about except bills. I wanted you to want to go. Not because it was a nice vacation, but because you wanted to be there with me. But you kept asking, who's going to water the flowers? Isn't it too expensive? And I knew that the flowers were more important to you than our shared fog. He sighed heavily, his hand going limp. We've wasted 45 years trying to be a good couple. Don't do this again, after I'm gone, break this damn glass cap. Be unbearable. Be selfish. Be alive. Better one day of real pain than 10 more years of this. Perfect silence. The sun finally bloomed blood red on the horizon. Arthur closed his eyes and never spoke to me again until he died. But those words, they were my sentence and my release. That evening, back in our empty, perfectly clean house, I didn't wash the dishes after dinner for the first time. I left a dirty plate on the table. I stared at it for an hour, and it seemed to me that this was the bravest thing I had ever done. I realized that Arthur was right. I had built a prison where he was the prisoner, and I was the guard, who also never left the perimeter. I remembered all the times he had tried to reach out. When he would bring me wildflowers and I would say there was a lot of trash on the table. When he would suggest we go to the movies for the last showing and I would say we needed to get some sleep before work. Every right decision I made was a nail in the coffin of our closeness. I walked over to his office. The smell of his tobacco was still there. I sat in his chair, the one he hated, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry. Not from grief, but from the realization of the enormous price we had paid for this piece. We had been professional actors in a theater with one audience society. And now that the audience was gone and the main character was dead, I was left on stage alone, holding a script that no one needed. This memory was what made me sell everything. For every object in this house was a witness to how we had killed each other with our politeness. Arthur had gone without ever seeing the mists of Scotland, but he had left me the keys to my own prison, and that night I finally dared to return them to the castle. It's been 3 months since I found that diary. You know, they say that people don't change at 80, that we're like frozen concrete, covered in moss and cracks. But I'll tell you, that's a lie. People only change when they have something to lose. And I lost everything the moment I realized that my perfect life was just a cleverly constructed set for other people's eyes. I woke up this morning at 4 in the morning. There's a special silence in this house at this hour. It's not peaceful, it's oppressive. Before, I would have gotten up right away, made the bed so that not a single wrinkle would dare to spoil the surface, and gone to make breakfast that no one would eat. But today I just lay there. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how many kilometers of dust I'd wiped off this furniture in 45 years. If you collected all this dust, you could probably make another Arthur out of it, just as silent and comfortable. I got up, went to the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't look away. Yes, I'm 80. My face is a map of the roads I've never dared to walk. And at that moment, I felt a rage that is usually only characteristic of the young. Rage at that Eleanor who was afraid to be simple, who was afraid to spoil the impression of the neighbors, who measured love by the number of clean dishes. I did something that my children still can't forgive me for. I put the house up for sale. All these antique cabinets, the silver, the oak table, everything went under the hammer. My daughter, Marta, arrived in hysterics. She screamed, "Mom, these are our roots. This is the memory of Dad. How can you sell his chair?" And I looked at her and saw myself 20 years ago, just as blinded by form, completely blind to content. "Your father hated this chair, Martha," I said calmly. "He sat in it like a torture chamber because he knew it was the only place in the house where he fits your idea of an ideal family." I don't sell memory. I free space from illusions. Now I'm sitting in a small hotel room at the foot of a cliff in Scotland. Yes, I'm here. Alone. I only have a small suitcase and Arthur's diary. There are no perfect curtains here, and the wind whistles through the cracks in the windows as if it wants to tell me all the secrets of the world. Yesterday, I got soaked to the bone in the rain for the first time in my life, and you know what? I didn't get sick. I felt my skin soak up this moisture like a dying man in the desert. I stood on the rock, looking out at the raging sea, and shouted Arthur's name. I apologized not for what I had done, but for what I had not done. For every no, for every it's not time, for every moment I had chosen order over passion, I am writing these lines for those who still have the audacity to believe that they have a whole life ahead of them. Listen to me carefully. We all live under the illusion that love is something that can be preserved. We think that if we build strong walls and be polite, we are safe. But safety is the fastest poison to the soul. Love does not live in safety. It lives in risk, in vulnerability, in the ability to say, I am scared, I am a failure, I want to change everything. I spent 45 years trying to be right, and as a result, I was left with a sense of guilt that outweighs all my assets. Don't be comfortable. Don't be low-cost partners. Be demanding of life and of each other. Demand intimacy. Don't let everyday life become your only common language. If you're having dinner with your significant other today and you're talking about repairs or vacation plans, stop. Shut up. Look her in the eye and ask, what did you cry about this week? Or, what dream did you kill so we could buy this car? You might hear something hurtful. Your perfect comfort might fall apart in an instant. But trust me, an old woman sitting on the edge of the world, it's better to live in the ruins of truth than in a palace built of lies. Arthur drew me with keys. He thought I was keeping him locked up. But he was wrong. I was the same prisoner, only I built my own cell and cleaned it every night until it sparkled. Today, I'm going to the mountains. My knees hurt. My breathing is getting heavy. But my heart is beating out of time for the first time in 80 years. I will leave Arthur's diary here at the top, where the wind can turn its pages. Let him finally be free from my control. If you are looking at the person you love right now, don't wait. Don't wait for better times, for after the holidays, for when the kids are grown. The kids will grow up and go. The holidays will pass, and time is the only resource that cannot be returned. All our money, houses, and silver spoons are trash compared to 1 hour of real, naked intimacy. We have wasted so much time trying to be right. Don't make my mistake. Be alive. While your heart still has the strength to pump blood, let that blood boil with feelings, not cool with politeness. My name is Eleanor. I am 80, and I have only just begun to live. I only wish I could do it without him. But I believe that where Arthur has flown away, there are no cleaning schedules and tax receipts. There is only wind, jazz, and the endless expanses of Scotland, through which we now travel together, he in my heart and I in his forgiveness.